2011.
Mayor and Council, thank you. This is a sanitary sewer utility rates. We're proposing a 7% increase. Part of the reason this is Metropolitan Council treatment charges make up 63% of these rates. Those charges are going up by 4%. The other issue that we're facing in the sanitary sewer, you may have read a recent article from the water utility who are having reduced usage of water. Actually, I believe it was back to 1963 rates of water usage in our area. If you're probably aware, our sanitary sewer billing is based upon the amount of water you use. So the water in and water out. So with the amount of revenue or the amount of charges to a home going down, we simply have to raise rates in order to get the same amount of money. And so even though we're using less, we're not being charged anything significantly less to offset that. So our non-costs, the remaining 37%, have to be spread out over a larger amount. And so we are literally having to raise rates because people are using the system less. And so that's, we're not seeing that. Believe it or not, we do make money on our sanitary sewer system when more water gets used. And so at this point in time, as people conserve, our rates are having to go up. So with that, we are recommending a 7% increase at this point.
I would just comment that while I served on the water board down there, I mean, that was even then a big topic of discussion, was that the future was going to be completely opposite of their past many years. And they, of course, had a billing structure that was in place that you paid less for water the more you used, and that has been turned upside down at this point. And so it becomes a big problem because when you have, in their case, a summer like we had with lots of rain and that type of thing, nobody's even watering their lawn, and so really they anticipate selling a certain amount of water at a certain rate, and when people don't use it, then they don't get the funding they need to keep up the system. And so it gets to be the same situation where it costs you more to produce less. Let's see, Ms. Juneman, I think you were first.
Well, that kind of happens when massive systems don't necessarily plan ahead for what could be coming environmentally. And it's also what's wrong when you're buying your water from a business. Environmentally, water's an issue and going to be an issue across the country. So we can either pay the price by paying a little more, or we can pay the price by not having it, or certainly the generation after us by not having it enough. So, you know, that part of the conversation that actually should go on with the water utility. It's too bad we're forced to buy it from a business.
I would comment that you are completely wrong and off base on that,
Oh,
because it is not a business any more than we are, Kathy.
Yes, they are.
And so if you figure we're a business, then I agree with you. Other than that, they're a utility, they make no profit.
They're a business.
And so, Mr. Copen.
Question, Chuck. Is this because is usage going down because people are putting in the better shower heads and doing things to cut consumption? And is this going to be a trend that's going to continue?
Mayor and Council, two trends. Number one, exactly what you said. There are low flow water utility features now that are really causing a reduction in the amount of water that people use, and that's good. Unfortunately, we have the same size pipes in the ground. We don't do that. We depreciate the system. We still have to clean the pipes the same amount of time. So we're really not on a per gallon or per 1,000-gallon basis where people save money by using less water. We have pretty much the same amount of costs. The other item that the water utility faces that we don't in the sanitary sewer is that 2010 was a very wet year. It rained a lot and the grass grew. And when the grass is growing, you don't water. And so people didn't use as much water this year simply because they didn't have to water the grass. And so the water utility really lost a lot of money. Our sanitary sewer rates are based upon the winter quarter usage when most people aren't watering their yard and using that excess water. So it's a fairly close approximation to the amount of sewer usage. and then we bill them that 4 times a year for what they use in the winter quarter. So most of our expenses are for the lower flow of water in the area, but industry as well is finding that water used to be very, very cheap. It's no longer, and so now that it pays to install systems that reuse water. Car washes are a great example. Car washes reuse water a tremendous amount, and so those types of things are causing it's great for conservation, but our expenses aren't correspondingly reduced, so we have to raise the rates in order to get the same amount of money.
And that's going to be a trend.
And my prediction, yet not only is it going to be a trend, it will continue dramatically. There are more and more water-saving, water-reducing features in homes, and as more homes change, absolutely, that'll be water will be used more efficiently.
Mr. Nephew.
Just to add on to that economic pile-up, which is generally a good thing if you are interested in conserving water, it's going to mean that the more people reduce their water usage, the more rates have to go up precisely because of these reasons, because we have to spread the capital expenses and overhead over fewer gallons, which means that there will be a bigger financial reward for increasing conservation, which will be a reinforcing circle of something where it may not have made sense to replace your water heater or your shower heads before. Suddenly you'll have a payback that'll be a much shorter time frame than had been the case, and you can imagine what the impact will be on businesses that use industrial quantities of water and may have bigger capital expenditures and also a lot more water to be saved.
So eventually, they'll only produce about a cubic foot of water a year, and it will cost about $10 billion.
Maybe not. That might be a slight exaggeration.
So we're kind of off the track slightly, having to do with the sewer rates. They are connected, sort of, although not directly.
I'll move number 6.
Second.
So Mr. Copen has made the motion. Mr. Nephew has seconded it, and so this is for the adoption of the sanitary sewer rates for 2011. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's ayes all. Okay, so the last thing that we have on this list then, a little bit different than the others, is to consider contract revisions the installation of solar panel array at the Maplewood Community Center. And so who is it? Mr. Cantrud, amazingly, is dealing with solar panels.
Mayor and Council, thank you. I think I got that put on my plate due to the fact that there were some issues that had come up, the questions essentially from the Council that needed to be answered regarding some of the contracts involved and some of the responsibilities and money involved in going forward with this project. I have been in conversation with the essentially the Parsons Electric attorney, an attorney at Winthrop and Weinstein, a very large firm in downtown Minneapolis. I've gotten some but not all of my questions answered, and I would just simply ask that you table this until more than likely the meeting of the 13th, I believe, of December, and we should get these questions answered.
So the suggestion is that because they're still working on some things that we just table this? Anybody
Please.
have any other thoughts on it?
I move to table to December 13th.
Second.
All right, so Ms. Juniman has made a motion. It's been seconded by Mr. Copen to table this item until December 13th. Is there any further discussion necessary? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes all. So we'll pick that up again in the middle of next month. Thank you. That then moves us into new business. The first item is a call for a special work session for November 29th, 2010, for the purpose of conducting commissioner interviews. I don't know.
Mayor and Council, I'll take that item. It should say to call the meeting for 5:15. Sarah's been working on setting those interviews up. The first interview will be at 5:25, so we're suggesting 5:15. You'll go through 10 minutes to go through your questions. The last interview is scheduled now at 7:30, So council, you likely will be here from 5 to 8 that evening. So we would ask that you adopt this motion. That would be a special work session 1 week from tonight at 5:15.
So moved.
Second.
So I've made the motion. Mr. Copen has seconded it to have a special work session on November 29th, starting at 5:15. Is there any discussion about that?
Just as a point of information,
Okay.
I didn't have that on my calendar, of course, and so I will be probably about a half hour, 45 minutes late to that particular workshop.
We'll get a mannequin.
That'd be fine.
Dressed appropriately and have a little voice box to ask your questions. Seems
Perfect.
We have the questions selected, so we will ask them.
Great.
So, anything else? All right, so we have the motion and the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's ayes all. That then brings us down to consider approval of a settlement agreement for condemnation of property at Azure Property at County Road D in Hazelwood, City Project 02-07.
Mr. Mayor, I'll give that presentation. I think I'll use the overhead quickly to go through. If we can have the overhead, I'll go through this. This was the subject of council discussion in a closed session this evening. The council went through this item, but for the public's information, I do want to review the summary of the settlement agreement that we're working on with Mr. Schreier. Before I go to this page, I should show the property in question is at County Road D and Hazelwood. If we can zoom into this map, this is Hazelwood Avenue. This is County Road D, the Bruce Vento Trail in this location. For those that don't know the area, or do know the area, this is Cardinal Point on the bottom part of the page. This is Legacy Village out in this area, the undeveloped portion. This is the parcel of land as it looked up until 2004 when we signed a right of entry agreement. Again, the old County Road D, for those in the area a long time, actually extended through this area, and this is the old trestle where County Road D used to extend. This is how the property looks today. It is the realigned roadway. You can see for the outline, this is the existing parcel of land that is the subject of the condemnation proceedings. County Road D coming through the new roadway. This is the realigned Hazelwood. You can see Hazelwood used to be in this location, and it has now been moved to accommodate that particular location. The summary of the settlement is what's called a total take. We will acquire the entire parcel, and then in the remainder of the land will be conveyed through the council, either to the EDA or the council directly. Will resell the land and cover it as much of its expenses for the acquisition as necessary. The settlement proposal is as shown. We'll go through some of the details. Appraisals were the city at appraisal at $575,000. The property owner, Azure Properties, had $1,050,000 was their asking price. We have agreed to settlement value at a 50-50 level, or $812,500, an assessment balance at no cost to the city, and expenses. The property owner was claiming nearly $300,000 worth of expenses that, based upon condemnation law in the state of Minnesota, is an expense for the condemning authority. We are proposing to reimburse only $70,000 of their nearly $300,000 worth of expenses. The total city settlement offer is $882,500. The date of the taking, as I mentioned, we started this particular project. The city has enjoyed usage of the property since June 29th of 2004. The date of the taking is February 11th of 2008. So the city enjoyed 3.5 years worth of the use of the land